As Arvid Erickson, I grew up at Painesville, Minnesota. I didn't join, I got drafted.
Okay.
And I had my choice if I would join in ahead of time, so the service that I wanted to be in.
Yes.
But I thought could drive a tractor and trucks and stuff, and I thought I would be in the tank corps. I would know more about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I changed my mind when I saw them. I'm glad I didn't join. And I ended up in the medical corps with no idea about what it was all about.
Okay.
22 years old.
22.
Yeah. And on March 11th, 1942, and my fiancée took me to the depot in Sioux Falls in my Model A Ford, which I loved, 1929 Model A Ford, and it was her birthday besides. So it was kind of a bad situation for her and me both. Went to Fort Snelling.
Okay.
That's when we took our basic training and the rudiments of the Army and the shots and clothes and how to salute the officers. And about the first time I got my uniform, I was walking from the lunchroom for supper, and I had an orange in my hand, and I was going across to the barracks, and I was peeling it, and I met an officer. Now what do I do? Throw him on the ground, or I just didn't do nothing until he'd come and talk to me and what I was supposed to do. Yeah. So that's the first thing that I found out right away. You salute them no matter what. Yeah. Well, we called us all out about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we got all our packs together and we lined up outside, and there was several hundred of us in line outside, and an officer come along with a piece of paper and was counting us off, and he just come 3-4 men from me, and that was the end. And we had to get on the truck and go to the train depot to where we were going to go. We had no idea where it was. Yeah. And we didn't know a soul, all strangers, and they were packed in the train, and we started off going.
And where did you end up?
We ended up in California, at Fort Ord, California, and we started to see palm trees, so we guessed about where we were going to be, but that's where we ended up. And it was a medical regiment at that time when we were in advert training. We got our training by hand, yeah. And we would go out in the desert and set up a training camp and treat people for simulated wounds that they would have, and keep a record of it and get them in shape, yeah. That was a full year, and then we went into different camp in Oregon to Camp White, and after that first year was done, and we went there and trained till we left for the overseas for another year. Yeah, medical training for 2 years, yeah.
Oh, yes.
My wife came out to California and got a job out there at the nurses' quarters, and a friend of mine had his girlfriend there, and she had an apartment, so she stayed with her, and then we got married in October of that 42.
Okay.
So then we went to Oregon, and she had to come later, and she worked up there in the nurses' quarters, an apartment for her, and so we finally got married in October. Yeah. That's when we went to San Francisco we took a train till we got up to docks, and then we boarded the biggest ship I ever saw in my life. And I was walking up to the door to go in that ship, and it said, "That is the biggest boat I've ever saw. That door is big as the haymow door on my farm." So one of the sailors says, "This is not a boat, it's a ship. That's something you used to go fishing in, is a boat." So we learned something right away. We crossed the equator with a big thing in them days. You had a ceremony, and the Fathom of the Deep, they called, and it was, I can't tell you how hot it was, but it was it was very hot. Yeah, that's when we didn't have any trouble with the boat. We left at night. They had the radio on, and we get the news, and we also got the lady from Tokyo that gives the news for her side, and she named the ship we were on, and was sunk, that ship. But it wasn't so, but it was, she knew where we were somehow. But anyhow, we never had any trouble with the submarines and nothing. So it was 13 days. Well, the first day, the swells were the first thing. The ship was just going like this. But when I got it speed up and straight ahead, didn't bother me. A mealtime, it wasn't the best thing that happened, but we stood at just like a trough, and the ship would go this way, your tray would slide down that way, and then it'd come back again, and sometimes it wasn't too good because somebody threw up in it.
Oh, God.
On the whole, it was a nice trip. I was glad to see land, yeah.
Where did you go?
Milne Bay, right on the end of New Guinea. That's where MacArthur had his headquarters when he come from Australia. And we were put to duty right away to build tents and a cement floor for tents. And that was the first thing we did. And we also learned not to raise your hand when you thought something was pretty good. They wanted anybody that knew how to drive a truck. So I knew that, didn't I? Raised my hand, and the next thing I know, I'm pushing a wheelbarrow full of cement.
You didn't know what you were agreeing to, huh?
So it don't pay to volunteer at all. Very hot, and mountains everywhere, yeah. When we were in the States, we couldn't wear or couldn't have a gun. We had a billy club.
Okay.
And when we went on duty, it was at night, you know, and some smart guy says, "Oh, halt, or I'll shoot you full of splinters." So he didn't have a gun. But when we got overseas, they threw the book away because they were shooting at us. But we had guns. I had a .30 caliber myself, and they had everything you could get your hands on, submachine guns and everything. Officers didn't wear their brass either because that showed up too good, because they liked to shoot at them too. Yeah. When the first thing we do was treat them kind of wounds they had to stop bleeding, and get the litter bearers here to take them back so an ambulance they could get in the ambulance and get to the field hospital, and then decide where they had to go from there, to the bigger hospital or different ones. So we had a tent. That was a surgeon's tent. They did all the surgery in a tent. I was an orderly in the tent. They had a captain and a lieutenant lady were in charge of the thing, and we were to give the people their shots and clean them up, give them the pills when the time come, and the bedpans and the urinals, and carry them away and keep them comfortable with the help with the food and everything. What we had it wrote down what the wound was in a piece of tag that was put to their uniform, so they knew what to do with it when they got back to the camp with an ambulance to take them away. So, like when that one time when we had that 40 people in the tent, there was no time to do anything but keep to work until another crew come in at midnight. Usually we went to 5 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight, and then somebody else would come until daylight. They called them field hospitals. That's big tent, and they'd done everything in a tent. The troops didn't go anywhere unless the medical went with them. They'd go on a line with them when they were shot down or wounded, so they would be able to get back with them. Yeah. We were assigned to many different units, but whoever needed medical help. Some of the experiences I had, we had a young man in the hospital had gangrene in his leg, and they were trying to save it, and the officer come to clean it up, and I had to hold his foot and leg straight while he was on it, and the smell was terrible, and it ended up they had to finally take it off. this leg. Then when he come back to the tent after the surgery, I had to stay with him till he woke up because he was going to be not normal. And the first thing he did was find out that they did take his leg off, and he was very upset, and his girlfriend wasn't going to like him anymore, and he was a total loss, and it took him a long time talking about it and just making him see that in time he will be okay. So that was one of the jobs that took the heart out to him too. You heard a lot when these patients were critical, it was mother. You would hear them asking for their mother. That was the common things, yeah. One thing that they found out, there was about 100 ways to make something to drink. And it didn't take long, that jungle juice. But anyhow, one night there was two guys having a party out there, and we were by a river, and they were arguing about it. One said he was a P-38, and the other one says some other plane, and I can fly right across that. Well, they lined up and they run and they went, and we heard a big splash, and that was the end of it. They ended both of them in the river. So that's some of the funny things. Yeah. We had spare times in the evenings. We played horseshoes or something like that, and volleyball, and that was easy to have, do, and not a lot of equipment and nothing, you know. In August, when the war ended, we were in Milne Bay, and then it was quiet from then on. We took a boat to Japan, and we went right beside where they were signing the peace treaty. We went right by it at the time they were signing them papers, and I could just 100, 200 feet from the ship. And we were told to, when we landed, to be careful because we had no idea how the people were going to react to us coming ashore. And we saw the flags all over the islands where we went, where all the artillery was stationed from the Japanese, and we would have an awful time trying to get into there. But anyhow, it went very well, and the people were standing and waving at us. Never had a bit of trouble with anybody. They're just like, you can't believe it. So it all went very well. Yeah. They didn't give us any problem whatsoever. Well, it took us a long time. We was in Japan from August till November before we got a ship to go home. And 2 days later, and the typhoon hit us, and the thing was just going up and down and sideways and whatnot. And the captain got on communications and he said, there will be no meals today because of the rough roads. And that nobody was moving. You was hanging on like dear life to whatever time you did. It was going to go this way or that way, and then it went up and it went down, and that was about almost a day and a half. I had dreamed about that when I was in Japan, that happened, and it come true. It did happen.
That you got into a storm?
Yeah, I got into a storm, and I did. So he was hanging and praying, and I'll tell you, just like they said, there's no atheist in the foxhole. We landed in Thanksgiving Day in Seattle, Washington, and they had the big auditorium all set up for Thanksgiving dinner, and we spent 2 weeks waiting for a train to get home from there. Finally got it discharged and travel pay, and they put it on another train, and we went to Minneapolis to get home then from there. Valley Springs, South Dakota.
Oh, okay.
That's where my wife was from, and I had been working at John Morrell's, so I had a job back when I got. And after the first of the year, I went back to the John Morrell's, and they were so glad to see me, and I could go to work tomorrow. Well, I could use a little money at about that time. You can't have fun without some money. So they give me 2 weeks pay. My wife got an apartment, and we was back to living again. Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. It's unbelievable the difference from now and them days. Yeah. But it was not a problem as far as I was concerned. Or I had some nightmares, of course, like other people, but nothing otherwise. We went along real good with our life, started over again. We had 45-year reunions in the years after, and they were as high as 300 people at a time. That we rented a motel, and every year until it got down to we was only having 7, 8 people coming anymore, and they decided they were going to have a farewell reunion, and that was it. So this couple from Reading, Reading, Iowa, had started this reunion, and him and his wife always ran the reunion, and in the middle of the summer, I think in June, he died, and she was by herself, and she was at the reunion, and I said, how are you going to do this, call it off? Well, she said, I don't know what to do. She said, my husband is not here, and well, I said, would you let me do it, you know. Well, okay, that was, well, we ended up with the paper from Mankato came to take the pictures, and the people started coming, and it was unbelievable. They were just young people bringing their parents in wheelchairs and everything to get them here at the last reunion. We had over 40 people unknown to us that they were going to come, but they were going to see the kids were going to see that they got there, and was a puzzle and made it a little tough to do. It's just hard to call it off, but it went real well. This here is my communications from my wife. And we didn't have a phone or nothing like they do now. So we had, that's about 200 letters in there. They're all up in order, and I've went through them myself many times, just nothing else to do. I sit down and read a bunch of them. In 43, we went overseas.
Okay, this is while you were
From
over.
44, well, yeah. And that's all, there's some of them down in California too, but most of them are overseas, yeah. Yeah, this was when MacArthur come ashore, and I was standing up here about 20 feet from where they stood, and then was us coming down the boat. That's part of the unit, yeah. And these papers were from the headquarters every quarter, so what we had done in the quarter and everything. That's where we got for doing the duty we did, yeah. So, okay, that's about all I can tell you. That it was unbelievable that things have went as well as they have, and I never would be. I got to go to Washington, D.C. to see that place. A friend of mine in Laverne, Minnesota, his son is retired from the service too, and him and his wife took his son, and I was down there visiting with him, and his son asked him if he didn't have anybody that he would like to take along. He said, well, Arvid is here. So he said, tell him to get ready, he's going. And I said, I don't know about going to the Washington, D.C., but for 4 days we went, and it was one of the most beautiful things. And I stood on the hill where the cemetery is, where John Kennedy was buried, and the changing of the guard was going there, back and forth. And I looked, as far as I could see was graves for people from the wars, and I couldn't take that. I just broke down. So this guy's wife took me down the hill to a bench, and we just visited about it, you know. But she was a wonderful lady, and I had never seen her before. This time it was second marriage for him, and she turned out to be a wonderful lady, and they took care of us, all the expenses and everything. Oh, so it was a great, and then I saw a bunch of them last night on TV going from Sioux Falls to the World War II visit, and it brought back a lot of memories too. So it was a great experience, but the guy says I don't want to do it again. No. Well, that's a tough one, you know. It's I hate to say I don't understand how it's turning out now, but the worst thing was we went to stay and no going home and coming back. That would be a tough one, I know that. But we were just there, then no R&R or nothing. We just went to work, and so I don't know. It's hard to say that people should go to the service, but I guess you gotta go with the times, but it's been terrible. Or there's people that go home and gotta go back again. That's a hard one, yeah. To tell them, we don't talk about that very much, what to tell them about going into the service. I have no idea how much they pay now, but it's a far pay from what I got, like $20 a month. So that was on the base pay. That's a hard thing to none of my kids had to go because they were all born since, and so we didn't have any children till for 8 years, because I was gone the service for 4 years, and okay, yeah. Oh, I don't know. I hope I've done something for people, and I get along with a good bunch of people. They treat me nice, and we have coffee together, and so it's pretty good, yeah. So I just hope I make a mark a little bit to somebody, yeah. 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 And this has been an honor to have this interview to the people who have been nice to us, and the veterans mean something to them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.